The Wyoming winter of 1889 gripped the high plains with a merciless hand, unleashing a blizzard that buried the land under snow so deep it swallowed fence posts whole. For 3 days, the wind wailed like a banshee, driving flakes against the weathered logs of a homestead 10 miles from Laramie. John Calder, a widower of 40, rose in the pre-dawn dark, his salt and pepper hair cropped close, his blue eyes carrying the quiet ache of years spent alone. His cabin, built by his father's hands, stood resolute against the storm, its chimney puffing faint smoke into the swirling white. The hearth's embers glowed weakly, a fragile defiance of the cold. John knelt, feeding cedar logs to the fire, the sharp scent of resin mingling with the crackle that broke the cabin's silence. He pulled on a heavy wool coat, its collar frayed from winters past, and wrapped a gray scarf around his neck, his calloused hands moving with the certainty of routine. Outside, the world was a blur of snow and shadow, the trails to town long, erased. John's boots sank into drifts as he trudged toward the barn, a sagging structure half buried under the storm's weight. His lantern, its glass smudged with soot, cast a trembling golden arc, barely piercing the gale. The cold bit at his knuckles, but he pressed on, expecting only the familiar, his mule, Bess, snorting for feed, or the groan of beams under snow. Yet, as he reached the barn, the door stood ajar, its latch swinging loose. John's brow furrowed. No wind could have pried that oak slab free. He gripped the lantern tighter, his breath a fleeting cloud, and pushed the door open, hinges creaking like a warning. The barn was dim, the air heavy with damp straw and the faint musk of hay. John raised the lantern, its light sweeping across, burlap sacks and rusted tools until it settled on a corner where shadows clung. There, huddled beneath a tattered quilt, were 2 figures, their forms small against the looming stacks of feed. The woman lifted her head, her face gaunt, her dark auburn hair matted from the wet cold, falling just past her shoulders in tangled waves. She was young, perhaps 28, with hazel eyes that burned with fear, yet held a fierce resolve, like a prairie love legend refusing to break. Her arms cradled a girl, no older than 6, whose blonde curls spilled from the quilt, her cheeks flushed red from the chill. The child, Abigail, clutched a fraying rag doll, its button eyes glinting in the lantern's glow. Her breath was shallow, a faint mist in the frigid air. John's heart caught, not from alarm, but from the raw desperation in their faces. He lowered the lantern, softening its harsh beam. "You hurt?" he asked, his voice low and steady, like a cowboy heart story told by a dying fire. Anna, the woman, shook her head, her chapped lips parting but no words coming. Her hands tightened around Abigail, protective, unyielding. John's blue eyes softened, tracing the girl's trembling form. "This storm's no place for you," he said. "My cabin's got a fire, food, you're welcome to it." Anna's gaze flicked to the door, then back to him, suspicion etched in every line of her wind-burned face. She didn't move, her body, a shield between her child and this stranger. John set the lantern on a crate, its light pooling like a promise. He unwound his gray wool scarf, still warm from his neck, and held it out. "For the little one," he said. Anna's hazel eyes narrowed, searching for a trap, but the sight of Abigail's blue-tinged fingers seemed to sway her. She reached out, her hand trembling, and took the scarf, wrapping it gently around the girl's shoulders. "We didn't mean to trespass," she whispered, her voice raw, barely audible over the wind's moan outside. "Didn't figure you for thieves," John replied, a faint warmth in his tone. He glanced at the quilt, thin and patched, no match for the cold. "Name's John. You got one?" "Anna," she said, hesitating. "This is Abigail." John nodded, his weathered face unreadable but kind. "Storm's not letting up," he said. "I'll leave the door open. Come when you're ready." He turned, his coat brushing the straw, and stepped back into the blizzard, leaving the barn door ajar. The snow swallowed his tracks as he returned to the cabin, his mind heavy with the image of Anna's guarded eyes. Inside, he stoked the fire, higher, set a kettle to boil, and pulled a loaf of cornbread from the pantry, its crust hard but honest. He waited, the wind rattling the shutters, wondering if trust could bloom in the heart of a moonlit Western saga. Could a lantern's faint glow guide a mother and child from the cold into the warmth of a stranger's hope? The Wyoming blizzard howled outside John Calder's cabin, its wind clawing at the shutters like a beast denied entry. Inside, the hearth blazed, casting a golden glow across the log walls, where shadows danced over a worn oak table and a single shelf of almanacs. John, 40, his salt and pepper hair catching the firelight, stood by the stove stirring a pot of barley soup. His blue eyes, etched with the weight of solitary years, flicked to the door, half expecting it to stay closed. The kettle hissed, steam curling like a promise in the warm air. He set out 2 tin mugs, a loaf of cornbread and a jar of chokecherry jam, its deep red glowing like a jewel. The cabin, simple but sturdy, smelled of cedar and hope, a fragile refuge in this sunset frontier tale. The door creaked open, a gust of snow swirling in before Anna stepped across the threshold, her dark auburn hair damp and loose, framing her gaunt face. At 28, her hazel eyes held a wary spark, like a deer sensing danger. She cradled Abigail, 6, whose blonde curls were tucked beneath John's gray scarf, her rag doll clutched tight. The girl's cheeks, still flushed from the barn's chill, softened in the fire's warmth. Anna's boots, caked with snow, left wet prints on the pine floor. She hesitated, her gaze sweeping the room. Table, hearth, a faded quilt draped over, a chair, as if searching for a hidden cost to this kindness. John gestured to the bench by the fire. "Warmer here," he said, his voice low, steady, a cowboy heart story woven from patience. Anna eased Abigail onto the bench, unwrapping the scarf but keeping the tattered quilt close. "We won't stay long," she murmured, her voice raw but firm. John nodded, pouring soup into a clay bowl and sliding it toward her. "Eat first, then decide," he said. Abigail stirred, her blue eyes blinking at the steam rising from the bowl. John broke off a piece of cornbread, spreading jam with a careful hand, and offered it to her. "Try this, little one," he said, a faint smile softening his weathered face. Abigail took it, her fingers trembling, and nibbled, a small hum escaping her lips. Anna watched, her hands knotted in her lap, then lifted the spoon, tasting the soup. Her shoulders relaxed, just a fraction, as warmth spread through her. John leaned against the table, giving them space. "Long way from anywhere," he said, not a question but an opening. Anna's hazel eyes met his, guarded but softening. "We were in Rawlins," she said, voice low. "Had a room above the Mercantile. Fire took it last month, lost everything but what we carried." She glanced at Abigail, who ate quietly, clutching her doll. "Her pa, he promised we'd start over in Cheyenne, left to find work. Never came back." Her words hung heavy, a prairie love legend scarred by betrayal. John's jaw tightened, but he didn't press. He poured coffee into a mug, sliding it to her. "Storm caught you hard," he said. Anna nodded, her fingers tracing the mug's rim. "Walked 2 days after the wagon broke, thought the barn was abandoned." She looked up, a flicker of shame in her eyes. "Didn't mean to burden you." John shook his head. "No burden," he said simply. He crossed to the hearth, adding a log, the fire flaring bright. Abigail yawned, her head drooping against Anna's arm. John pointed to a narrow door off the kitchen. "Got a bed in there," he said. "Clean sheets. I'll take the chair." Anna's lips parted, protest forming, but John raised a hand. "Storm's no place for pride," he said, his tone gentle but firm, like a desert rose romance taking root. Anna rose, lifting. Abigail, whose eyes fluttered, closed. She paused at the door, turning back. "Why help us?" she asked, her voice barely above a whisper. John met her gaze, his blue eyes steady. "Seen too much cold in this world," he said. "Figured I could spare some warmth." Anna held, his look a moment longer, then nodded, stepping into the room. The door closed softly behind her. John sank into the chair by the fire, the cabin quiet save for the wind's distant moan. He stared at the flames, his thoughts drifting to a wife lost to fever, a life once full now echoing with silence. Could Anna's fragile trust, kindled by a stranger's fire, bloom into a Western romance that defies the storm? Dawn crept over the Wyoming plains, the blizzard's fury now a faint sigh, leaving a fragile crust of snow across the homestead. Inside John Calder's log cabin, the hearth glowed, its warmth softening the chill of the Laramie winter of 1889. John, 40, his salt and pepper hair damp from hauling wood, set a skillet of bacon sizzling on the stove. His blue eyes, carrying the quiet resolve of a man who'd faced loss, scanned the room, a polished oak table, a shelf of almanacs, a faded quilt on a chair, now alive with the scent of coffee and promise. He poured steaming coffee into a tin mug, his wool coat hung by the door, its frayed collar a relic of harder days. The morning light, pale and golden, spilled through the window, painting the pine floor in hues of a sunset frontier tale. The door to the back room opened softly, and Anna emerged, her dark auburn hair tied back with a scrap of twine, her hazel eyes less guarded but still cautious. At 28, her face bore the wear of hardship, yet a spark of resilience shone through like a prairie love legend refusing to fade. Abigail trailed her, 6, her blonde curls bouncing, clutching her rag doll, its button eyes glinting. The girl's blue eyes widened at the bacon's aroma, her cheeks no longer pinched by cold. Anna smoothed her patched calico dress, a faded blue that hung loose on her frame, and hesitated by the table. "Smells good," she said, her voice tentative, testing the warmth of this Western romance. John slid a plate of bacon and cornbread onto the table, adding a small bowl of molasses. "Ain't much, but it's hot," he said, his tone steady, a cowboy heart story of unspoken care. Abigail climbed onto the bench, her doll propped beside her, and reached for the cornbread, crumbs falling like tiny stars. Anna sat, her hands folding in her lap, then took a piece, her movements slow as if savoring the act of being fed. "You didn't have to," she said, meeting John's gaze. He shrugged, leaning against the counter. "Figured you'd need strength. Storm's easing, but the cold's stubborn." Abigail munched happily, humming a soft tune, her ragdoll swaying. Anna's lips curved, a fleeting smile, before her eyes drifted to the window, where snow clung to the sill. "We'll move on. Soon?" she said, almost to herself. John's brow furrowed, but he didn't argue. He poured her coffee, the mug's warmth seeping into her hands. "No rush," he said. "Ground's too slick for travel." Anna nodded, her fingers tracing the mug's rim, her thoughts a tangle of gratitude and fear. A sharp knock broke the quiet, the door swinging open with a gust of cold air. John's Aunt Martha, a wiry woman of 60 with iron-gray hair and a tight bun, stepped inside, her shawl dusted with snow. Her sharp green eyes swept the room, landing on Anna and Abigail with a mix of curiosity and warmth. "Heard you had guests," she said, hanging her shawl by the fire. John rose, taking her basket of eggs and knitted mittens. "Found him in the barn," he said. "Storm caught him." Martha studied Anna's thin frame, Abigail's bright curls, then set the mittens on the table. "These'll fit the girl," she said. "Winter's no friend to small hands." Anna's hazel eyes widened, her voice catching. "Thank you, ma'am," she said, her hands hovering over the mittens. Martha waved her off. "No ma'am here, just Martha." She turned to John. "You feeding him proper?" "Trying," he said, a rare grin tugging his lips. Martha nodded, her gaze softening. "Good. Keep him close till the road's clear." She left as briskly as she came, the door shutting with a thud. Anna slipped the mittens onto Abigail's hands, her touch tender, her eyes glistening. "Folks are kind here," she murmured, almost surprised. John cleared the plates, his movements deliberate. "Martha's tough, but she means well," he said. Anna stood, brushing crumbs from Abigail's dress. "I can help," she offered, glancing at the woodpile by the hearth. "I'm no stranger to work." John met her gaze, seeing the strength beneath her wariness. "Fair enough," he said. "There's a broom by the door." Anna's faint smile returned, a spark of purpose in her step as she began sweeping the floor, Abigail trailing her, humming. The cabin felt fuller, its silence now a gentle rhythm of shared tasks like a desert rose romance taking root. Could Anna's tentative steps toward belonging withstand the shadows of her past? The Wyoming sun climbed higher, its pale light melting the snow into glistening patches across the Laramie Plains in the winter of 1889. John Calder's homestead hummed with quiet life, the log cabin's chimney trailing smoke into a sky now clear of the blizzard's wrath. John, 40, his salt and pepper hair tucked under a worn felt hat, hauled firewood from the barn, his blue eyes steady with purpose. His wool coat hung inside, replaced by a denim jacket, its cuffs frayed from years of labor. The barn, no longer a refuge for strangers, stood firm, its oak door latched tight. Inside the cabin, the hearth crackled, a beacon of warmth in this sunset frontier tale. Anna, 28, swept the pine floor, her dark auburn hair pulled into a loose braid, a few strands framing her face. Her hazel eyes, once sharp with suspicion, now softened with cautious ease, reflecting the resilience of a prairie love legend. Her patched calico dress, faded blue, swayed as she worked, the broom's rhythm a quiet hymn. Abigail, 6, sat by the window, her blonde curls catching the sunlight, her rag doll propped on the sill. She traced shapes on the frosted glass, stars, flowers, her blue eyes bright, the knitted mittens from Martha snug on her hands. The cabin smelled of fresh-baked cornbread and drying lavender, Anna's touch weaving a fragile sense of home into this Western romance. John dropped the firewood by the hearth, brushing sawdust from his hands. "Roads'll clear soon," he said, his voice a low drawl, a cowboy heart story of unspoken care. Anna paused, her broom stilling. "We've troubled you enough," she said, her tone firm but tinged with regret. John shook his head, meeting her gaze. "No trouble," he said. "Stay till you're ready." Abigail turned from the window, her doll swaying. "Can we stay forever?" she asked, her voice small but earnest. Anna's breath caught, her hazel eyes flickering with hope and fear. Before John could answer, a sharp rap at the door shattered the moment. John opened it, his broad frame filling the doorway. Amos Tate, a wiry store clerk from Laramie with a pinched face and muddy boots, stood on the porch, a leather satchel slung over his shoulder. His brown eyes darted past John, landing on Anna and Abigail. "Morning, Calder," Amos said, his tone clipped, a smile too tight to be kind. "Word's out you've got company." John's jaw tightened, his blue eyes narrowing. "They're guests," he said, voice flat. Amos shifted, clutching his satchel. "Folks in town are talking. A woman and child. No kin to you hold up here. Some say she's running from something." Anna stepped forward, her broom set aside, her hazel, eyes blazing. "We're no one's trouble," she said, her voice steady despite the flush on her cheeks. Abigail clutched her doll, her small frame shrinking against the window. John raised a hand, his gaze fixed on Amos. "You got a point. Say it," he said, his words sharp but calm. Amos hesitated, then straightened. "Preacher's wife heard. She's got no husband, no papers for the girl. Folks want to know who they're dealing with." John's fist clenched at his side, but his voice stayed even. "They're dealing with me, that's enough." Amos's eyes flicked to Anna, then back to John. "Just passing word," he said, stepping back. "Town don't like mysteries." He turned, his boots crunching snow as he left. John shut the door, the thud echoing in the quiet cabin. Anna's hands trembled, her braid slipping loose. "They think I'm a liar," she whispered, her voice raw. "Maybe worse." John turned to her, his blue eyes soft but fierce. "Let 'em think," he said. "You're here. You're safe." Abigail slid off the sill, hugging her doll tight. "Are they going to take us away?" she asked, her voice quivering. Anna knelt, pulling Abigail close, her hazel eyes glistening. "No one's taking you," she said, her voice fierce. John crouched beside them, his denim jacket brushing the floor. "Not while I'm here," he said, his tone a vow, a desert rose romance taking shape. Anna met his gaze, her fear warring with gratitude. She stood, smoothing Abigail's curls, and picked up the broom again, her movements deliberate, as if work could anchor her. John watched, his heart heavy with the weight of their trust. The hearth's glow flickered, casting long shadows across the room, a reminder of the world beyond these walls. Could Anna's fragile haven withstand the storm of whispers gathering in Laramie? The Wyoming sky softened, its pale blue streaked with clouds that drifted like whispers over the Laramie plains in the winter of 1889. John Calder's homestead stood quiet, the snow now a thinning veil across the fields. Inside the log cabin, the hearth's glow bathed the pine floor in warmth, the scent of cedar and fresh bread lingering. John, 40, his salt and pepper hair catching the firelight, sat at the oak table mending a harness, his blue eyes steady but troubled. His denim jacket hung by the door, his hands moving with the rhythm of a man who'd carried loss too long. The weight of town gossip carried by Amos Tate's visit hung heavy, threatening the fragile peace of this sunset frontier tale. Anna, 28, stood by the window, her dark auburn hair loose, framing her face in soft waves. Her hazel eyes, once fierce with defiance, now shimmered with resolve and fear, a prairie love legend teetering on the edge. Her faded blue calico dress brushed the floor as she folded Abigail's small coat, her movements quick, purposeful. Abigail, 6, sat cross-legged by the hearth, her blonde curls glowing, her rag doll nestled in her lap. She hummed softly, unaware of the tension, her knitted mittens dangling from a chair. Anna's hands trembled as she packed a canvas bag with bread and a spare shawl, her voice low but firm. "We'll head to Rawlins at dawn," she told John, not meeting his gaze. "Can't stay where we're not wanted." John set the harness down, his jaw tight. "You're wanted here," he said, his voice a cowboy heart story, raw and unyielding. Anna shook her head, her braid slipping. "Town's made up its mind," she said. "They'll mark Abigail with their talk. I've seen it before. Shame follows a child like a shadow." Her hazel eyes met his, glistening. "I won't let that happen." Abigail looked up, her blue eyes wide. "I like it here," she whispered, clutching her doll. Anna knelt, smoothing her curls. "I know, sweetheart," she said, her voice breaking. "But we gotta keep moving." John rose, crossing to the hearth, his boots soft on the pine floor. "You don't have to run," he said, his tone gentle but firm. Anna stood, her hands balling into fists. "You don't know what it's like," she said, her voice sharp. "To be judged, to have nothing but what you carry. I've fought." Too hard for her to lose it all. John's blue eyes held hers unwavering. He turned to a small wooden box on the shelf, its edges worn smooth, and opened it, revealing a silver pocket watch, its face etched with a faint star. "This was my Sarah's," he said, voice low. "She carried it through every hard winter. Said it reminded her time heals even when it hurts." He held the watch out, its chain glinting in the firelight. "I ain't giving this to fix you," he said. "I'm giving it because you're stronger than the talk, Anna. You and Abigail. You're no shadow. You're the light this place needs." Anna's breath hitched, her hazel eyes locked on the watch. She reached out, her fingers brushing his, warm and steady. Tears traced her cheeks, silent but heavy. "Why do you care?" she whispered. John's lips curved, a rare softness in his weathered face. "Because I see you fighting," he said. "And I reckon some fights are worth joining." Abigail slid beside Anna, her doll swaying. "Can we keep it?" she asked, pointing to the watch. Anna nodded, closing her fingers around it, its weight a vow. She looked at John, her fear easing, a desert rose romance blooming in the quiet. "I don't know how to stay," she admitted, her voice soft. John leaned against the table, his blue eyes warm. "Start with supper," he said. "We'll figure the rest." Anna's faint smile broke through like sunlight after a storm. She tucked the watch into her pocket, her hand steadier, and lifted Abigail, heading to the stove to warm the bread. The cabin's warmth wrapped around them, a fragile shield against the world's judgment. Could Anna's heart, stirred by a keepsake's promise, find the courage to call this cabin home? Spring's first breath swept across the Wyoming plains in 1889, coaxing green shoots from the once frozen earth of John Calder's homestead near Laramie. The log cabin stood proud, its chimney trailing wisps of smoke into a sky now bright with promise. John, 40, his salt and pepper hair glinting in the sunlight, hammered a new fence post by the corral, his blue eyes warm with purpose. His denim jacket was slung over a rail, his linen shirt rolled to the elbows, revealing arms strong. From years of toil, the air carried the scent of sage and wildflowers, a testament to the sunset frontier tale unfolding under the open sky. Anna, 28, stood on the porch, her dark auburn hair loose, catching the breeze like a banner of resilience. Her hazel eyes, once shadowed by fear, now sparkled with quiet joy. A prairie love legend fully bloomed. Her calico dress, a soft blue mended with care, swayed as she tied a bundle of lavender to dry. Abigail, 6, darted through the yard, her blonde curls bouncing, her rag doll tucked under one arm. She chased a butterfly, her laughter ringing like a bell, her knitted mittens, long replaced by a straw hat, perched jauntily on her head. The homestead, once silent, thrummed with life, a Western romance woven from shared days and steadfast hearts. John paused, wiping sweat from his brow, and watched Anna hang the lavender. Their eyes met, a silent vow passing between them, a cowboy heart story etched in glances. The pocket watch he'd given her, Sarah's keepsake, now hung from a ribbon at her waist, its star-etched face a reminder of time's healing grace. Anna stepped off the porch, crossing to him, her hand brushing his arm. "Fence looks sturdy," she said, a teasing lilt in her voice. John grinned, rare and bright. "Needs to be," he said. "Got a family to keep safe." Anna's smile deepened, her hazel eyes glistening with unspoken gratitude. A week later, under a cottonwood tree by the creek, John and Anna wed in a simple ceremony, their vows carried on the spring breeze. Anna wore a cream shawl over her calico dress, a sprig of wildflowers in her hair. Abigail, clutching a basket of daisies, scattered petals with glee, her straw hat slipping. Martha, John's aunt, stood nearby, her iron-gray bun softened by a rare smile, her green eyes misty. Neighbors, few but kind, brought cider and cornbread, their presence a quiet rebuke to Laramie's fading gossip. The preacher, an old man, with a voice like gravel, spoke of love's endurance, his words a desert rose romance rooted in faith. John slipped a plain silver band, his mother's, onto Anna's finger, his blue eyes steady. "For always," he said. Anna's hand trembled, her voice soft, always. That evening they sat on the porch, Abigail curled between them, her head on Anna's lap, a firefly flickering in her palm. The stars blazed above, a canopy of light over the homestead. John's hand found Anna's, their fingers entwining, the silver ring cool against her skin. "Didn't think I'd find this again," he said, voice low, a confession to the night. Anna leaned against him, her auburn hair brushing his shoulder. "I didn't think I'd ever find it at all," she replied, her hazel eyes fixed on the horizon, where the plains stretched boundless free. This moonlit Western saga echoes the spirit of the American frontier, where resilience and love forged new beginnings against all odds. In the late 19th century, homesteaders like John and Anna faced harsh winters and societal judgment. Yet their stories, much like those in classic Western romance novels, remind us that hope can thrive in the hardest soil. Their tale teaches us the power of compassion, a lesson as timeless as the Wyoming stars. If this prairie love legend touched your heart, like this video, share your thoughts below and subscribe for more cowboy heart stories every week. Let's keep the frontier's spirit alive. As the fireflies danced, the cabin's windows glowed, a beacon of home. Abigail stirred, her voice sleepy. "Is this forever?" she asked, her blue eyes half closed. Anna kissed her forehead, her smile radiant. John squeezed her hand, his heart full. The cottonwood rustled, its leaves whispering of spring's promise. Could this family, forged in a storm's shadow, write a new chapter under the endless Wyoming sky?